Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Kim's Scholarship and Journey. And from today, we'll explore the parables unique to Matthew. We'll start with wheat and wheat, and there are a few parables in Matthew. In other words, we find that these parables only in Matthew. For example, wheat and wheat, treasure, pearl, vineyard workers, unmerciful servant, 2 sons, great banquet, and 10 virgins. These parables we'll study from now on. First of all, we'll study today wheat and weed. Wheat and weed. Matthew added his interpretation, allegory, to the parable proper. So we'll see Jesus told a parable, but later Matthew added his interpretation allegorically to Jesus. This parable in Matthew fits well in his worldview and theology. Okay, so this parable has a role to play in the narrative of Matthew. Eventually, our interest is in Jesus' storytelling. What can we learn from Jesus' original parables? So first of all, let's read Matthew here, chapter 13, 24-30. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. Interesting. Now compared to someone who sowed not just seed like in Sow's parable, right? Good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat. Interesting. On one hand, we have a good seed sown by someone, but there are also weeds which were sowed by the enemy and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. Interesting, right? So wheat and weeds exist together, growing together. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he replied, No. For in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. So Matthew, interpreted this parable. So Jesus explains the meaning of this parable, but actually that is Matthew's interpretation. In other words, Matthew's allegorical interpretation was included in this story. That is found in 12:36-43. Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples approached him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man, the field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers. And they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen. So this fits in Matthew's theology of last judgment, right? And also Matthew's eschatology in a way, eventually there will be the end and consequence, right? So Matthew's allegory, let's look at in detail here. Matthew's allegory, like the sower's parable, which is allegorized by the evangelist, like 4 types of the ground as 4 types of heart. Here also in this parable of wheat and weed, we see kind of allegory. The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the children of God. The weeds are the children of the evil one. The enemy who sow them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age. The reapers are angels. But you know what? In the parable proper, we do not have this kind of a allegorical correspondence between A and B. This is quite arbitrary interpretation of the original story in this way. So Matthew's focus with this allegory is quite clear. Until the harvest, they must work hard and live with the children of the evil one. In other words, you should not judge others. You should not remove others. You should not kill others. You should not hate others simply because they are weeds, they are evil, right? Be careful. Still, it's a time for you to love them, engage in them, engage in the world through love. Otherwise, you cannot separate them out of the community, out of society. Why? Because in this parable, the fact is that wheat and weeds grow together until the harvest. Okay, you should not cut the weeds out of the field. Wait until the harvest. Theoretically speaking, maybe it's good or better for you to go to the field and remove, sort out the weeds and cut weeds from the field. You can do it. If you're a farmer at that time, you can distinguish, wheat from weeds. You can do it. But in this parable, unusually, right? Jesus tells the story this way, If you are a wise farmers, probably you could cut these weeds out early on. The earlier, the better. The earlier you remove, the weeds, the better. Yes, if you are smart farmers in this time, you could have done that way. But the master's, advice is unusual, right? Saying that, no, don't remove the weeds right now. Just wait until. Why? Because until the harvest, okay, there is time. You should not remove even weeds. But in the end, there will be an end and judgment. That's Messianic theology, last judgment, final judgment. There will be consequence. But until then, you have to do what you're supposed to do, which is to love people, even enemies. The above represents Matthew's consistent theology. Now let's hear from Jesus, okay? What we might learn from Jesus' original parable. Jesus does not explain his parable, right? All allegorical interpretations, if you see, in the Gospels, those are probably from the evangelists, not from the lip of Jesus. So we have to try to understand what's going on in this metaphorical story world, with this parable. The reality of the world we see from this parable is quite clear. It kind of, the existence of growing together, right? With wheat and weeds. Wheat grows with weeds. That's weird, but that's the reality. What can you do when you live with the enemies, in a harsh world? Should we expel those who are evil from us immediately? Or should we try to find a way to coexist or endure hardships? In other words, expulsion, easy expulsion or separation is not always the best policy, right? In Jesus' time, Pharisees and some other Jewish leaders tried to separate themselves from the sinners, right? They always tried to maintain their own sanctity and identity away from those who are considered sinners. But Jesus does not agree with them. Why? Because the kingdom of God, the rule of God, right, has come now. It's available even with them. If they come to God, right, they receive the rule of God. So expulsion or separation is not the best policy. Rather, we have to invite others. We have to see and realize the powerful coming of God, God's rule. So expulsion, separation is not the answer to the issue we live here, to the reality we live here in this world. So much so the right attitude toward other people, even enemies, is what? Patience and love. Patient love. We might say patient love. Hard love. Hard love. Sometimes we do not realize we also have weeds in our hearts. We sometimes just point our finger to other people, right? You are weeds. I am good. We are good. We are wheat, but you are weeds. But what about you yourself inside of you? Maybe weeds may grow in your own mind and heart. What can you do with yourself? That's real critical, right? Eyes we need in our interpretation of the parable. The last thing, reflection. If you read the parable of the wheat and weeds without Matthew's allegorical part, okay, without Matthew's allegorical part, if we just focus on the parable proper, would you find it more useful and insightful? I think so, okay? So how we read the parable of Jesus is so important, okay? So Jesus' parable help us to reimagine the world we live now, because we have to face difficult, realities when we live together with all kinds of weeds in me, in us, and in others. That is somehow the real question that we are, facing when we study this parable. This is the end. Let me finish here, and thanks for watching. And hopefully I'll be back with the other parable. Thank you. Bye-bye.